The Aramaic and Palestinian Targum, we're reading Genesis chapter 14. And it was in the days of Amraphel, and he is Nimrod, who commanded Abram to be cast into the furnace when he was the king of Pontus, of Ur, Arak, called as he was Arak, I-R-I-K. He was tall amongst the giants. He was king of Thalasar, of Kedar-Laomer, because he had bound himself or gone over among the bondsmen of the king of Elam, and Thidal, crafty as a fox, king of the people subjected to him. So that's who Nimrod was. I've actually got a teaching there, or not a teaching, but a sharing there of Nimrod on my channel, of who he was, where he came from. But he is like the one world order man of the day back then. He made war with Bera, whose deeds were evil, and king of Sodom, and with Bersha, whose deeds were with the wicked, king of Amorah, Shinab, who had hated his father, king of Admah, and Shemeber, who had corrupted himself with fornication, king of Zeboiim, and the king of the city which consumed Bela, the dwellers thereof, which is Zoar. All those were joined in the vale of the gardens, also called Paradisia, the place that produced the streamlets of waters that emptied themselves into the sea of salt. 12 years they had served Kedar-Laomer, and in the 13th year they had rebelled. And in the 14th year came Kedar-Laomer and the kings who were with him, and smote the giants who were in Ashtaroth, Carmel, and the strong who were in Hamath, and the terrible who were in the plain of Kirithaim, and the Choihi, the dwellers in caravans, who were in the high mountains of Begala, unto the valley of Pharan, which was high upon the edge of the desert. And they returned and came to the place where they rendered the judgment of Moshe the prophet, to the fountain of the waters of strife, which is Rekram. And they smote all the fields of the Amaleki, and also the Emori, who dwelt in En-Gedi, and the king of Sodom, and the king of Amorah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboiim, and the king of the city, which consumed its inhabitants, which is Zoar, went forth and set the array of battle against them in the valley of the gardens, with Kedar-Laomer, king of Elam, and Thidal, king of the nations obedient to him, and Amraphel, king of Pontus, which we know as Nimrod, and Amrek, king of Thesar. 4 kings battled in array against 5. And the valley of the gardens had many pits filled with bitumen. And the kings of Sodom and Amorah fled away and fell there. And they who were left fled to the mountains, and they took all the property of Sodom and Amorah, and all their food, and went. And they made captive Lot and the sons of Abram's brother, and his property, and went. And he dwelt in Sodom. And Og came, who had been spared from the giants that died in the deluge, and had ridden protected upon the top of the ark, and sustained with food by Noah, not being spared through high righteousness, but that the inhabitants of the world might see the power of the Lord, and say, were there not giants who in the first times rebelled against the Lord of the world, and perished from the earth? But when these kings made war, behold, Og, who was with them, said in his heart, I will go and show Abram concerning Lot, who was led captive, that he may come and deliver him from the hands of the kings, into whose hands he had been delivered. And he arose and came on the eve of the day of the Pascha. The Pascha is Passover. So Og came to Abram on the eve of Passover and found him eating unleavened cakes. Then showed he to Abram the Hebrew, who dwelt in the valleys of Mamre, Moreh, brother of Eshcol, the brother of Aner, who were men of covenant with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was made captive, he armed his young men who were trained for war, grown up in his house, but they willed not to go with him. And he chose from them Eleazar, the son of Nimrod, who was equal in strength to all the 318, and pursued unto Dan. And he divided them at night in the way. A part were to engage with the kings, and a part were hidden to smite the firstborn of Egypt. And he arose, he and his servants, and smote them, and pursued them which remained of them unto the place of the memorial of sin, which was to be in Dan, from the north of Damascus. And he brought them back all the substance, and also Lot his brother and his substance he brought back, and also the woman and the people. And the king of Sodom came forth. After that he returned from destroying Kedar-Laomer and the kings who were with him, to meet him at the plain of Mephanah, which was the king's racecourse. And Malkizadok, who was Shem bar Noah, So Malkizadok is the son of Noah, the king of Jerusalem, came forth to meet Abram, and brought forth to him bread and wine. And in that time he ministered before Yahweh. And the Jerusalem text says, and Malkizadok, king of Jerusalem, who was Shem, who was the great priest of the Most High. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Lord God Most High, who for the righteous possesseth the heavens and the earth. And blessed he Eloah, who hath made thine enemies as a shield, which receiveth a blow. And he gave to him 1 of 10 of all which he brought back. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the souls of the men of my people whom thou hast brought back, and the substance take to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted my hands in an oath before the Lord God the Most High, who for the just possessed his possession of the heavens and the earth. If from a thread of the latchet of a small sandal I receive anything of all that is thine, lest thou magnify thyself in saying, I have enriched Abram for my own. Have I not power over all the spoil, apart from what the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who were with me? Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre they also received their portion. And the Jerusalem text says, If from a thread to the latchet of a sandal I receive of all that is thing, thou art magnify not thyself and say, I have enriched Abram. So there's quite a bit in this text. This is the war of the 5 kings versus the 4 kings of basically the satanic lions of Nimrod and the giants. How they warred against each other. It's interesting to note here in the Targum that it talks about Og, and it explains who Og is, and that he actually was one of the giants that was spared from the deluge. to continue that bloodline on. Notice that Abram was having unleavened bread at the time of Passover when Malkizadok, who was Shem, visited. Malkizadok, that means kings and priests. Malka is king. Zadok is the priestly line. And Noah continued that through his son Shem. And he had a house called the House of Shem, where Abram actually spent quite a lot of time, about 15 years growing up in that house. And we'll learn later that Isaac actually went and spent similar time with Shem before he married Rebekah. And it's interesting too that from all the spoil that Abram got from delivering Lot, he didn't give any, he gave it all to the king. So the king wouldn't be puffed up to think that all Abram's lot, that he contributed to that he made him rich. So Abram took nothing from anyone. He just was always careful in what he did to make sure he never had any alignment or allegiance or any connection with those that were not from the Father. So I hope you enjoyed this reading.